I don't wait for the phone to ring. I call a friend and say, do you have a minute? Can I talk? And if a friend is ill-equipped, if they start fixing, I'll interrupt the conversation and say, listen, I love you. This is not what I need right now. I love you. I love you. I'm going to get off the phone right now, okay? Because when they go into fix-it mode, it actually makes me feel worse sometimes. The friends that are some of the best equipped people are folks in the military. You know, they know how to manage shit better than almost anybody I know. I've cried with more people in uniform than I've ever cried with people in suits. And the way that we talk to each other, like I have a friend who's a general. I've known him for a million years, so it's been fun to watch his career. He's now a general. And when we say goodbye to each other, we say, I love you. And when we get on the phone with each other, if it's been a long gap, he'll say to me, hey man, first of all, he calls me brother. Hey brother, right? Which means something. Hey brother, I really miss you. And he says things that a lot of guys don't say to each other, you know? He talks to me like sometimes I talk to my female friends. Mm-hmm. It's full of emotion, it's full of honesty, and there's no machismo whatsoever. And yet he's a warrior. He's a combat veteran, you know? And he'll say, hey man, I miss you. It's been a while. I go, yeah, I miss you too. And then we'll get off the phone and he'll say, hey, I love you. I mean, I love you too. I'll talk to you soon. And though he will, he and there's a small group like him, you know, I would call him in my most, in my darkest times, and I know he would call me. I have another friend, and he's going through some shit, and I'm honored that when I called him up and said, hey, I haven't talked to you in a while, what you been going through? You know, I just realized I haven't talked to him in a while. And I went, hey, what have you been going through? And he just let it all out. And I could hear the frustration, I could hear the pain. And I didn't try and fix it. I just encouraged him to keep talking. What else? Go on, tell me more. What else? Oh my God, that's really, go on. Yeah, what else? And just sat in the mud with him. And it was an honor. I'll tell you, it was an honor that he felt comfortable enough to do that. Because I guarantee it, he, like so many, are really good at hiding it, faking it, suppressing it. He's a pro. In fact, I'm sure he is where he is partially because he's a pro. And, you know, if you have the skill set to hold space for someone, you will have an amazing sense of gratitude that your friends trusted you and loved you enough that they would go there in front of you. And I think that's a standard that we should strive for. Like I said, we're also preoccupied with ourselves, you know? There's no greater honor. There's no greater honor than being able to serve a friend in need.
When I see, you know, a friend sees you sat in the mud, a friend sees me sat in the mud, their ill-informed love reaction is to try and get me out of the mud, right?
Of course.
You know?
Well-intentioned. I don't knock it. I know it's well-intentioned.
How do I get out of the mud? The reason I ask that question is because I know there's someone listening to this right now who is sat in the mud. In many respects in my life, I'm sat in the mud. Mm-hmm. The thing we're all looking for is we want empathy in the fact that we're sat in the mud, of course, but we're desperate for a way out of the mud, right? Mm-hmm. That's understandable. Mm-hmm. Where does the plan come from? How do we get out of the mud?
So if it were a prescription, you and I wouldn't have to work anymore.
On the subject matter of loneliness, because it's easier to focus on.
Right. So I think in large part, like any cooperative effort, like any relationship, and a friendship is a relationship, right? Having colleagues is a relationship. Mm-hmm. In some part, it's co-created, right? You know, you want to show up in any kind of relationship, professional or personal, and make it a co-creation. And, you know, I think when somebody first calls you, I don't think they're looking for solutions. They're looking for companionship and catharsis. They're just looking not to feel like overwhelmed. And at some point, you can either ask, can I offer some pointers? You're not ready for that yet. No, I'm not ready for that yet. Versus, yeah, go ahead. Or the person will ask themselves, you know, what do you think? How do I, like, what do I do? You know? Or I'll know what to do, but I don't want to do it. Like, I know what to do. I just need to do this. And the person can just say, I'll do it with you. And just offer, again, companionship. Most of us, believe it or not, have more knowledge about how to get out of it than we think. Because we've dispensed the advice in the past. Probably. You know? I think most of us have a sense, like, it's, again, I think part of it is allowing ourselves to feel the feels. You know, I think if I suppressed the feelings, they would last longer. But allowing myself to feel the feels, I know, is part of the solution. You know, it's like if you try and suppress feelings, it's not good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They're signals, right?
They're signals.
Yeah.
They're just that's all they are. And maybe they're telling you other things. Like maybe all of my loneliness is telling me is like, Simon, you idiot, just get some sleep. Maybe that's all it's telling me. Maybe I'm feeling lonely is because I'm just freaking exhausted. Turns out I've been sleeping better, and turns out I feel better. You know, maybe I've been eating crap. You know, maybe I'm full of friggin' sugar and fat.
Do social expectations play a role? I am this age and I should be this by now.
Oh, I think we have to say yes, right? And like, the midlife crisis is a known thing, and you sort of expect, you know, you hit middle life and you're like, all right, you're going to start evaluating everything, you know, your receding hairline, your sagging body, you know, and new comedians joke about it. We joke about it. But I think the new thing is the quarter life crisis. You know, the number of friends that I have that are in their mid-20s or like barely pushing 30, and they're suffering all the things that somebody in their midlife would suffer, and their evaluation is different. It's not like, oh my God, I'm closer to the day I'm going to die than the day I was born. It's not that. It's more like, oh my God, I'm at this age and I haven't achieved all the things I said I was going to achieve, or I'm just getting started, or I think now the quarter life crisis is like a real thing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, older generations scoff at it, you know? But I think that is very much societal expectation. Like, I'm supposed to be here. Like, the number of young people I know who I say, you're entry level. Don't worry if you're running the place yet. Just, even if this is a bad job, if it's toxic, get out. But there's very few jobs that are super toxic, you know? If you just have a bad boss, like, stick with this and learn. Like, the learning you're going to get from like, my first boss was a bad boss. And I was there for 1.5 years, and it was one of the best educations I got. And by the way, the camaraderie that I built in my team, because we all shared the same bad boss, was amazing, right? So I learned teamwork. I learned having each other's back. I learned people taking care of each other. We learned how to manage and how not to do things. I didn't just abandon it because my boss was bad. My point is when I say stuff like that to young people, they immediately interpret that as the worst advice ever because I'm wasting time. Or take a gap year. I can't. I'm wasting time. Like, wasting time from what? Like, what race are you? Who are you comparing yourself to? What standard? Like, you know, I won't achieve the thing by what? Like, what imaginary scale are we working on here? You know? But there is this very clear imaginary scale by which young people are pegging their life against. And the only thing I can offer is my own experience. And I know it's the worst thing to do because, you know, when you're in it, you're in it. And nobody can think that far ahead. And it's fun to think about, right? Because I remember when I was young in my career and things were just starting to move, there was this one guy I used to go to for advice who was much more successful than me, really buttoned up, really sort of, you know, operations oriented. And he would constantly give me advice that he was basically either telling me I was an idiot or made me feel like an idiot by all the things I wasn't doing or wasn't doing right or should be doing or could be doing. But it never felt right to me. And he would say stupid things to me like, I won't get out of bed for, you know, X amount of thousands of dollars. I'm like, well, I do stuff for free all the time, you know? And if I didn't have my sense of purpose and cause, if I didn't have my North Star, my why, my vision to guide me, I would have listened to him, and it would have been to my detriment. Because he was very finite-minded, and it was very sort of like, hit this target. And thank goodness I ignored all the advice. And flash forward, my career has completely eclipsed his. It just took longer. And that's the point is that the reason people don't follow my ideas, the reason people reject my books is because they want my advice, or they want my perspective to work this year. And you'll hear, I've used this analogy all the time. Like, I will tell you how to get into shape. I will tell you have to exercise 20 minutes a day every day. You have to eat healthy, and you can only have sugar on days that start with S. You know, I like what Mark Hyman says, which is, treat sugar like a recreational drug, you know? And if you do these things 100%, you will be in shape and you will be healthy. 100%.
Nobody wants that book.
Right? But the problem is you have to do it. And somebody will say, well, when will I be in shape? And the answer is, I don't know. 100% it works. I don't know when. And when I discovered the why, and I first articulated the why, and this is also important, it wasn't just the why, I also discovered Emmett Rogers' work on the law of diffusion of innovations, which I did write about also in Start With Why. That combination of starting with why and following the law of diffusion, I realized that 100% it was going to work. By starting with why, I was going to attract early adopters, and early adopters would make the tipping point. I didn't know when, I just knew it would work, and I just stuck with it. And I disconnected myself from any arbitrary, time-based achievement, which freaks people out, especially if you're on a quarterly or annual financial schedule. But I disconnected. I knew it would work, and I just stuck with it. Turns out it worked. Some of it worked quicker than I expected. Some of it worked slower than I expected. But it worked. And young people, myself included, when I was their age, I'm not saying I had I was 100% the same. It had to be a discovery for me. And that discovery didn't come to my early 30s. So my 20s were me being that person going, you're an idiot, I can't waste time. But there's something magical about being on the path and just being disciplined and just sticking to, and the funny thing is, as we're talking about this, I don't think of myself as a disciplined person. I'm actually very undisciplined. I don't have an exercise regime. Like I go in and out. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I'm just not a very disciplined person. And I have so much respect for people who are super disciplined. When they commit themselves to something, they do it, and they're just really good at sticking to the plan. I'm useless at sticking to the plan, right? But I'm realizing now the only discipline I had was I trusted in these two theories, starting with why and law of diffusion.
So apply that to the topic of someone who is, let's say, 35 years old.
Yeah.
36 years old, 37 years old.
Yeah.
And they're lonely.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many friends I've got and how many conversations I have, to the point that I was considering writing a book and going on the process of research, who are saying to me right now that they are single, they are lonely, their biological clock is ticking, and the pressure of them trying to find someone is so intense that it's causing them to maybe become less capable of finding someone.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out what those people that are listening need to help them get out of that.
Well, look, there are people who are better equipped to answer these questions than me.
We can riff.
But, I can wax philosophical. Like so many things, and I'll use another military analogy, right? Which is these wonderful human beings who volunteer to wear that uniform many of them are willing to risk their lives to save the life of someone they don't even like, but they love, right? Or they trust. And what people neglect or forget is that deep, intense trust that they have for each other does not show up when they arrive on the battlefield. They've been building it, and the organizations for whom they work know how to build that trust, that the trust exists by the time they get into combat. And this is when I talk about command and control. I talk about asking people and getting feedback and all these things, but the reality is command and control also is a real thing. So, if you're a Marine and you show up in combat, they talk about that as managing chaos. They refer to combat as managing chaos. Sounds a lot like an entrepreneurial venture. That is managing chaos, right? And there are times where you have to be command and control. But the problem is you can't be command and control before you've earned somebody's trust. So when you're back at home, you're building trust, so that when we are in chaos and I yell an order at you, I don't have time to ask you your feelings. I don't want your feedback. I don't need your ideas. I need you to do as I'm telling you right now. And you have to trust that I'm making the best decision that I can. I'm not going to put your life recklessly at risk. And I even may make a mistake. And people will die because of my mistakes, and that's still okay. But you can't do command and control all the time. It's episodic and it's earned. And so when COVID struck and we first went into lockdown, I went into command and control. I even made an announcement to my team like, hey, listen, I know we have a culture where there's a lot of feedback, and if there's feelings hurt, like we have that mechanism, and I want to hear all that stuff, but I can't hear it for another 2 weeks. Save it up. If I'm a bit blunt in a meeting, tell me in 2 weeks. I don't have the bandwidth right now because what we're doing is survival. And it worked fine. That command and control, because I built up the trust, it worked fine. The problem is leaders who believe they can be in command and control all the time, right? So the reason I'm telling you this is you're asking two different questions, one which is more difficult, which is we need to build these skills when we're healthy and in a good state of mind, so that when we're in the mud, we ourselves have some equipment and some tools, and our friends that we're going to call have some equipment and some tools, right? Mm-hmm. You're asking, with no equipment and no tools, and I'm sitting in mud, how do I get out? That is an entirely different conversation that I'm probably the least equipped to answer. There are professionals who are much better equipped to answer that. And what I'm saying is so that we don't find ourselves in that situation right now with big smiles on our face. How's your day? Great. I'm great. Things are great. When are you taking that listening class? When are you going to practice mindfulness and meditation? And have you tried meditation?
Yeah. My girlfriend. Okay. Yeah. My girlfriend's like a yoga meditation.
Okay, so you're forced to do it.
Yes, exactly.
Got it.
I have to run away from it.
Right. Okay, so if anyone has ever practiced meditation, you sit still and you focus on one thing. When they say clear your mind, that's not true. You don't clear your mind. That's impossible. But you do focus on one thing. It could be your breath. It could be your mantra. It could be a dot on the wall. It could be a sound. It doesn't matter. The point is you focus on one thing. And when you get distracted or you have another thought, like, ooh, did I leave the oven on? What you do is you label that a thought and you push it out of your mind and you say, I'll deal with that later. And you go back to focusing on the one thing. And there are tremendous benefits to the self of being present and calm and clear-headed by practicing meditation. But that is not the sole purpose of meditation, just so you can be present. In fact, I believe that you are not present until someone else says you are, right? So the reason you practice meditation is so that when you're sitting with a friend and they're telling you about their good day or their bad day, you are focused on one thing and one thing only, what they're telling you, as opposed to waiting for your turn to speak. And you may have thoughts, and you say, that's a thought, I'm going to label that and deal with that later. And you remain so focused. And there's a bang in the background, but your eyes don't leave your friend because you're so present. At the end of the conversation, they will say to you, thank you for listening. They will say, thank you for being present. They'll say, thank you, I feel heard. Congratulations, you were present. Congratulations, all that meditation was worth it now. The practice of meditation, though it has benefits to yourself, the reason to practice meditation is as a service to others.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.